Hello, and welcome to another weekly update and live stream from the Freedom Broadcasters. On this week's panel, we've got myself, Chris from Mind Wars, we've got Roy from Awakening Podcast, we've got Steve from Awakening Nation, and we've got Grace from Quantum Nurse. And this week's special guest is Joy Warren from Coventry here in the UK. And Joy is going to cover the topic today, basically all about fluoride and all the dangers, the hazards got to do with fluoride itself, why a government worldwide anywhere might want to actually add fluoride to the water itself in the first place. We'll cover topics such as lobby groups, interests, NHS for decades trying to push the narrative. All the people you might think are for your so-called health are actually, shall we say, on the opposite ends of the actual spectrum itself. Also topics like why it's never, or it has never been proven safe or effective, the legal side of things, is it a food, is it a medicine? There are just so many things that we're going to get through today. So before we jump into it, Joy, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for asking me.
You're very welcome on. What I want to get to first is, so you had your awakening back in early spring, I believe, 2003, when you were at a conference in Coventry itself. I believe it was Friends of the Earth. And that was your kind of awakening moment in itself. Can you talk us through that, what happened? But I know the year previous, before that, you did an environmental science degree and what built up to where you were coming from there onwards. Can you talk us from that stage onwards, the background and kind of, well, the journey you've been on so far? And literally, as your bio says, it literally has changed your life forever.
It most certainly has. I thought I was in for an easy retirement when I left work in 2010, but nothing like that at all. Yes, I got my degree with the Open University in 2002, and I belonged to Friends of the Earth, so I went to a talk given by Dr Diane Philips, who was an anaesthetist who lived in London but moved to Coventry to join what was then known as Walsgrave Hospital. She almost immediately became ill, and her colleagues couldn't work out what was wrong with her. And she had a horrible 2-year journey of her own, and then she finally discovered that she'd got hypothyroidism, that's low thyroid. And that was at the same time when she found out that she had been drinking fluoridated tap water, which she hadn't been drinking in London. So she stopped drinking the tap water, got herself a whole house filtration unit, and gradually got better. And then one day she put in filters which were not correct, which were not taking out the fluoride, and she became ill again. When she discovered that she got the wrong filters, put in good filters, and her health got better again. So this is a really classic way of determining what is causing your ill health. She then eventually moved to Derbyshire, which is not fluoridated, and I think she's a consultant now. So this set me going. Now, I didn't believe it in 2003. It took me a whole year to research and to find out that Diane was perfectly correct, and I would be an idiot not to believe her. But you do your own research. You have to check these things out. And having a scientific background, yes, I don't take anything for granted. So there you go. I've been at it now since 2004, and every year I say it's got to come to an end. They can't possibly continue this idiotic practice of adding a toxin to our drinking water. But it's still going on, and now the government's getting even stronger in favour of it. We don't know why, apart from the fact we think it's to do with the dental profession. We can move on to that later if you want to.
Yes, that's what I want to ask you, because just myself and yourself on the panel are the only ones here from the UK at the moment. And just before we get into the other side of things, talk us through because a lot of this is going on through the back door while everybody else is worried about the whole COVID circus theatre show, shall we say, on wheels going around all day, every day. And talk to us about, they're trying to pass this through within the next couple of months. I believe it's spring of next year is the kind of final date, shall we say. And in the UK, for many people don't know, it's only parts and sections of UK that has fluoride in the water itself. But of course, the lovely government, shall we say, the lovely corporation or fraud corporation that they're trying to obviously push through 100% fluoride in all of the UK's water within the next couple of months and pass into legislation. Can you talk to us a bit on that and update us? Where are we along the road on that journey as to where that is coming at the moment?
Okay, so in the UK, before laws can be enacted, you have what are known as white papers, then green papers, then a bill, and then an act, and then regulations. So it's a long process, and it started 2 years ago. the white paper, we were asked to comment on what the role of water companies should be in regard to water fluoridation. Well, it was a very stupid question, which sort of deviated people's minds away from the real principle. Of course, there should be no role of water companies to fluoridate, because they're supposed to be providing us with potable water, not medicinal water. So the bandwagon's been moving now for 2 years, a little bit delayed by COVID. At the moment, in March, the select committee looked at it and didn't do anything to remove certain clauses to do with water fluoridation. It's now at the bill stage, got through Parliament in 2 readings without any amendments. And now the committees are looking at it line by line to make sure it's legal. So we're expecting any day now for them to start looking at clauses 128 and 129. And these are standalone clauses in this bill. And they are determining that the government will take responsibility for all new water fluoridation proposals. And they will take responsibility for going out to public consultation, and they will take responsibility for paying for the capital equipment and the revenue costs. So the local authorities, who've been having a hard time of it since they took it over in 2013, will now be cut out of the loop. So once we get the bill passed through the committee stage, it then goes to the House of Commons to be enacted or to be voted on. If it passes, it goes to the House of Lords, and the Lords can actually say, we don't like this, this and this, and they can send it back to the House of Commons. And it can go backwards and forwards quite a few times. But in practice, it'll probably only go backwards and forwards once. Once it's enacted with clauses 128 and 129 intact, the Department of Health and Social Security will set to, with their legal advisors, to pass regulations which go through another committee. That's not voted on by the Houses of Commons and Lords. And the regulations will just tie everything up into nice little tiny packages and knots. That's going to happen probably springtime, possibly summertime. Sometimes it takes 2 or 3 years for regulations to be drawn up, but I think they'll probably rush it through.
How confident are you of it not going through, shall we say, and what are the works in place at the moment? I know there's petitions and stuff being signed and all that as well, but how much is there a groundswell of movement in the background that are obviously fighting tooth and nail to not have this gone through? And do you see it now more so than ever in the last 17, 18 years or so that you've been on this roadmap, shall we say, or this journey?
Yeah. Well, the first thing we've got to do is make sure that the petition gets it to 100,000 signatures, and it's a third of the way there already after 24 days, which I think, as far as fluoridation is concerned, is unheard of. It's really very encouraging. So the first thing people like me have to do is to try and nudge it, make sure that people do know about it and do sign it. And the expression is to sign and share. And that's what we're hoping is going to be done. The next thing is we're hoping to get the clauses removed from the bill by submitting requests to the Public Bill Committee, which will be deciding it next week. If they've had enough submissions, they might listen, or there again, they may not. So it's just, we've just tried everything we can. And the groundswell of opinion, apart from the 33,000 signatures we've got so far, we've started a social group on Telegram, and we've got 600 members already, which is really good news. My own organization's gained about 50 to 60 members in the last few weeks. Again, that's good. We all have to try and fight against it as opposed to accepting it or avoiding it. So although it's good to invest in filters, water filters like distillers and reverse osmosis, the most important thing to do is to get everyone writing to their MPs to educate them. Because I don't think that the MPs who are newly elected, who've been there only for 2 years, they won't know anything about the issue. So we need to get the MPs on board. And we're trying to talk to the MPs who in 2003 voted against it, and to see if they would now sort of rally around each other and try and talk to other MPs who know nothing about it. That's the legal side of doing things. Of course, we have other things up our sleeves, and I'm not quite sure I want to sort of discuss those yet at the moment. But we're not hopeless. We're not sort of floundering around. We are doing something very, very proactive.
And I mean, fluoride has never been proven safe or effective. As we know, they used it back in the Nazis, back in the day, of course, a lot higher concentrations of it as well to make them docile and, less fight against the regime and the system, etc., etc. What, if any at all, what kind of a case, I suppose, are the government here in the UK trying to bring forward to push their reasoning for, fluoridating 100% of the UK itself? Why would that be so?
Right. So their main reason is there's no proof of harm. And they can prove it because they've done 2 monitoring reports with 4 years between them, and they've never found anything wrong with it. It doesn't harm you at all. Well, it all depends which books and fairy tales you read, I guess. What else are they doing? They're saying it's effective at reducing dental decay, but I think they're not looking in the right place somehow, because right back in the beginning, Trendley Dean in the 1930s in America, he completely overlooked the fact that although the natural level of fluoride seemed to prevent dental decay, they completely ignored the fact that that water had quite high levels of calcium. So was it calcium or was it fluoride which was helping to prevent dental decay? Well, of course, they opted for fluoride because the industrialists, Aluminium Company of America, Alcoa, they were desperate to get rid of their hazardous waste, and they didn't want to spend money on neutralizing it. So they with other scientists, they all colluded together to make up this wonderful fairy story that children living in Texas with buck teeth and mottled teeth, the decay was very, very low, and it's a really good thing to put in the drinking water. So they decided to add work out what was the middle point to prevent dental decay, but which would not cause mottling of the teeth. And they lit on 1 milligram of fluoride per litre of water. Doesn't sound very much, I know, but when you analyze it, it's millions and millions of atoms in 1 milligram. So it's never been proven that it's safe, because it can't do that. We haven't done any clinical tests, and there've been never any good research into it. When we asked Health Canada in 2015, they said they had no proof of safety. And when we asked the same question of Public Health England in 2019, there's no proof of safety. They had no documents in their organisation which could point to safety. And, even though we know this is the truth, it's still being swept under the carpet. Now, I've lost my track of thought here with your question.
No, you're all good, because I know I want to ask you something else before I actually do pass it on itself. Is, I think, which is interesting, the connection with MHRA, and is it a food, is it a medicine scenario, but kind of table tennis back and forth with that. Talk to us a small bit on that part of it, shall we say, before I actually pass you on to Ryder.
Is it drinking water? Is it food? Or is it a medicine?
What is it? Or what are they alleging it is?
Well, MHRA says that it's a food because they don't want to make it into a medicine. And they're all sort of paddling very, very fast underwater and saying it's drinking water, go away. But as far as we're concerned, the law is specific on this. The Drinking Water Directive, which was retained post-Brexit in the UK, defines what drinking water is. Or what it isn't, in fact. And what it isn't is if it's medicinal water, like, for example, spa water from Baden-Baden or Bath, that's not drinking water. And if it's bottled water, that's not drinking water either, because it's in a bottle. So when you look at fluoride, it's a prophylactic. It's there to prevent dental decay. Whether it works or not, that doesn't make any difference. It's put in the drinking water to stop dental decay. Therefore, it's prophylactic. It's a preventative medicine, and therefore it's a medicine. And we are not protected under the Drinking Water Directive if we are harmed by fluoridated water. And somebody else has said that if you find there's too much of a pathogen in your drinking water and you're fluoridated, the government's not going to haul you out, not going to help you at all, because you're not drinking water. You're drinking a medicine. Right. So there's the argument that it's a food. Well, MHRA, our lovely medicines agency, says it's a food. Well, if it's a food, it's illegal because you're not allowed to add hexafluorosilicic acid to food. Yeah, not allowed to do it. It's another European regulation, which also has been retained post-Brexit in this country. Although, paradoxically, sodium fluoride and potassium fluoride are allowed to be added to food. The first one is sodium fluoride is for school milk, primary school milk. And the other one's potassium fluoride is what they add to salt to make it nice and fluoridy. So if it's food, it's illegal. If it's a medicine, it's illegal because it's, we're not getting any protection. Yeah, there you go. It certainly isn't drinking water, that's for sure.
Joy, thank you. I'll pass you on to Roy.
Thanks, Chris. Was there not a court ruling saying that it was a medicine?
I'm not aware of it.
Okay. No, because I had seen something, I had notes on that there was a court ruling on it. But
yes, I'm sorry, I beg your pardon. Yes, New Zealand and Lord John C. in 1983, he said that fluoridated water was a medicine. And then New Zealand in 2018, a panel of judges said, yes, it's a medicine. And it's also compulsory because it's very difficult to avoid it. And
could that ruling be used under international law against the UK?
Yes, I think so. I think they are precedents and they can be cited in a court of law.
Okay. Do you cooperate with other countries? Because I know I actually had the girl from Ireland, Aisling. She was fighting it for years, but it's still in the Irish water. Like we've got fluoride everywhere. And I know there's a percentage in the UK. Are you cooperating? And the same in the US. It's not in every state, but it's in some of the different states. Do you cooperate internationally to make yourself stronger?
We are getting that way. We've all adopted a generic name of fluoride free and then the name of the country. So we've decided on Fluoride Free Alliance UK for obvious reasons. Don't think about the abbreviation. And yes, the whole idea is to sort of swap notes and to basically encourage each other. Yes. So that's New Zealand, Australia and Canada, America. I haven't reached Ireland yet. And Ireland's in a very unfortunate position because it's mandatory in Ireland, whereas in UK it's permitted.
We might be able to try to do it under the EU ruling because I'm in Poland. It's not in Poland, so I'm sure there's some way. But it's just getting a group of people together is the main issue.
You're up against vested interests in the scientific community in the EU. I mean, yeah, they would never have fluoridation in their water supply in the EU, although it's in Serbia and a little bit in Spain and, of course, in Ireland. And we were 10% in UK.
So I also heard that because some people think by boiling the water that they're doing better for themselves because they tend to, I'll boil the water, then let it cool down and drink it. But I've heard that it's actually worse to do that.
Well, of course, you're concentrating the water. Yes, you're having less water, but more fluoride. Well, same amount of fluoride, but less water. You don't want to concentrate it. You can't do it that way. You cannot boil it. You can distill it, though, which is useful. So if you use a large distiller, you can buy for about £100. And they're very, very effective. 4 hours to distill 4 litres of water, quite expensive on electricity. But it's the best method. But you end up with flat water, so you add a little bit of electrolytes back into it to make it much nicer. No, people think that it's boiling it will help, but we have to try and disabuse them all the time. And then we get onto filtration and all those lovely filters that people have been selling all these years. And some of them have been telling porkies and saying it removes fluoride. But, the faster the water flows through a filter, the less chance the filter will trap the fluoride. And the only really good methods are distillation and reverse osmosis, what is known as freshly squeezed water. And there is a filter jug called Zero, which I haven't actually analysed yet, but people say it does because the manufacturers do claim that it removes fluoride, and the total dissolved solids count of the filtrate is 0. So it looks hopeful. But I just want to get my hands on a sample.
Oh, excellent. And like, I know that the Irish and the English, we love our cup of tea. And I've only seen that on the website recently. I didn't realize that there was fluoride in the tea.
Yeah, so the older the tea leaves, the cheaper the tea, the higher the level of fluoride. So we've got some tea's got about 5 milligrams per litre. So that's not too good. And you may get up with fluoridated water. It's even worse. Yeah. White tea possibly is a bit better for you. I wouldn't touch any Indian tea. I have Red Bush from South Africa instead, if the need takes me. So
yeah, because I saw that on your schedule, robust, and so that's what I have. I'm drinking tea at the moment, and when I read that, but it's the robust is the one I have to set out at 0, so I was feeling a bit better for it.
Well, there's always the fruit teas, of course. But no, I don't know how we managed during the war to beat the Germans, because we were drinking tea, and then you think, well, tea was on the ration, and there was no fluoridated water, so it wasn't so bad for us in those days. But now people drink 4 mugs of tea a day, and that's really bad news. So if you have a brown tea, like Sainsbury's brown tea, and it's 4 milligrams per litre, and then you've got 1 litre of 1 milligram of fluoride per litre of water, that brings it up to 5. So you're always up to 5 milligrams of fluoride a day with 4 mugs of tea, and the maximum you should have in any day is 6. Well, you're going to have fluoride in your manufactured food, and in your bath water, and your shower water, and in any liquids which are made in a fluoridated part of England, such as Rugby. Like PepsiCo has Pepsi Max made under license by Britvic in Rugby, which fluoridates its water at 1 milligram per litre. So it's really bad news. And it's not declared on the label, of course, because they're just using water. Well, it's not water, it's medicine. But as far as they're concerned, it's water.
Recently, where I'm living, I've seen all the chemtrails, and it's like this part of Agenda 2021 and Agenda 2030, where they're basically poison the air, poison the food, poison the water. Are you kind of collaborating with people that are kind of chasing the chemtrail? Because the reality is everybody's fighting their own battle. You know, you've got your team, you're building your numbers, and everyone's doing that. And the reality is, if everybody just came together and, you know, just stop the whole lot, because like you're fighting since 2004, and you know, I mean, that's around the world. It's like we're kind of a losing battle unless we kind of join forces.
Yes, we need a hugely efficient social media to get us all together, don't we? Yeah. I haven't got the answer to that, because I haven't got a huge brain to work it out. But I'm sure there are some people out there who are really getting to grips with social media to unite us all together. And I'm doing my bit, of course. I'm actually contacting all the magazines, all the channels, anybody who's health conscious, to try and get them to push this petition along. But yes, we have to get together, definitely.
And like, I mean, we're exposing the media constantly, you know, radio and media. Like, are you getting any exposure from them, or is it just from podcast? Is there anyone that's on the mainstream that's actually giving you some airtime? No. You know, it just shows like you have to kind of go down like the Telegram groups and create the alternatives, you know, which is unbelievable. Just the other thing then is, do you know who's actually supplying the fluoride? Because I'm not sure under the freedom of information that you can actually request that, but I'm just curious, because I'd say it's one of their own. Normally it's kind of like the first cousin of an MP or somebody like that. It's always somebody that's connected.
Well, we asked the question of the drinking water inspectorate, and they told us, which was very nice of them. So the hexafluorosilicic acid comes in from the Negev desert in Israel, where Israel Chemicals Limited have a phosphate fertilizer facility. So we got industrial hazardous waste. It's washed out, scrubbed out of the chimney, and then tankered over to the Mediterranean coast, and then shipped through the Mediterranean and up through the Bay of Biscay into London, where it's distributed by a company called Industrial Chemicals Group Limited to the 5 fluoridating water companies in England. I can't tell you what's happening in Ireland. They probably have got a different supplier. In my time, there have been 3 suppliers: Yara International from Finland, and then about 5 years ago, it went to Derivadas del Fluor, which is in the Basque Country, and then a year and a half ago, it went to Israel Chemicals. Right. So why can't they bury it in the Negev Desert? It's a huge place. Why can't they get shot of it? Well, they wouldn't make any money by doing that, and it would be sink into the desert, and hopefully would not pollute any watercourses, aquifers, whatever. But there's no money to do that. Bury it. Oh, fine, okay, but we can sell it. Yes, we can't sell it as a waste, so we'll sell it to somebody who wants to use it. Yes, okay. So they sell it for a very small amount of money, and the British government will pick up the tab. And in so doing, instead of polluting the Negev desert, it will pollute every single waterway in England and Wales where there's a sewage treatment works, because only about 1.3% of the water provided by water companies is drunk, and the rest end up in the sewers. And that's 0.5 milligram of fluoride, which goes down the rivers. We don't know whether it goes into the sediment or whether it carries on in the current. And when it goes past the next sewage treatment works, the amount is magnified. And we have actually written to the Environment Agency to ask them to do a risk assessment. It's early days, still early days.
I've seen a truck that overturned with fluoride in it, and it basically dissolved the road, and they had like hazard chemicals, all the suits and everything. And just to let you know, you're drinking that. It doesn't matter that it's a fraction. Would you put a fraction of cyanide into your body? No, you wouldn't, because you die. But they do it in such a level you don't die, but it's affecting you.
Where was the accident?
I'm not sure. I remember seeing the picture. I'll have to check it again, but I'd be able to dig it out. But yeah,
I'm sorry. I thought
you see
when you saw it.
No. I saw the picture and I was reading the article on it. But listen, Joy,
we don't really want to get carried away with the dangerous nature of the acid before it's diluted, because that is sort of drawing you away from the fact that it's a milligram, a millionth of a kilo. It's not a lot, but it's still millions of atoms in that 1 milligram. And although the British Fluoridation Society will say to you, "Oh, it's 1 in a million," yeah, but it's millions of atoms in 1 in a million. And we have to sort of draw their fire. We have to say to them, you can't make it look so puny, because it isn't puny. This stuff is dynamite in your bodies.
Yeah. Listen, Joy, thank you very much. I'll pass you on to Steve.
All right. I love these conversations. So I think it's important to make it clear that fluoride, in America, they call it hydrofluorosilicic acid, is hazardous waste. It's one of the top 5 most poisonous substances apparently on the planet. I don't know if that's true, but it's used in rat poison.
No, we don't use it anymore as rat poison. But it's
but I mean, my point is, it's hazardous. If it looks like hazardous waste, smells like hazardous waste, walks like hazardous waste, it's hazardous waste, and that's pretty much what they're. And like you said, anything manufactured food-wise with water that's fluoridated becomes fluoridated. So pasta, Cheerios. They did a study on Cheerios. There's like 10 times the amount of water the amount of fluoride in Cheerios in concentrated form that you would get, versus just drinking a glass of water. And, the lie is that it's for your good and to prevent cavities, but there's been studies that prove that that's not the case. It looks like, to me, it's used to dumb down the public, lower IQs, and cause health issues over time. So this is my theory, but I think what Roy was talking about is, I think I had sent him an article or a news clip where a fluoride truck was going to a municipal water site to add the toxic waste to the drinking water, and they had a spill, and it started. This is on the news. You can see it on the news. It's actually a real news clip, and they came with hazmat suits to clean it up. So, I mean, I know that, but it's like people wouldn't believe that, and everyone I've told, they still use fluoridated, fluoride toothpaste. But are you familiar with Dr. Dean Burke?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So I liked him. He worked for the he was the head of a department at the National Cancer Institute. He worked with Otto Warburg. I mean, he said if you want to save hundreds of thousands of lives from cancer, just stop fluoridating the water. And of course, they called him a quack and a kook and a nut job. He died in 1988. So I guess, what kind of progress do you make with these organizations that I feel don't want to address it? That they're there to sweep things under the rug and let the hazardous waste and poison be added to the water. Are you making any progress?
Well, I think I ought to refer you to your own country, because the CDC and the EPA are dragging their feet. We've taken the EPA to court in California. They've been told by the plaintiffs that the fluoride is damaging the intelligence of children. The judge has directed EPA to start looking at a risk assessment, so that with a view to declaring that fluoride is a known developmental neurotoxin. The court case has lasted longer than we thought it would. We hoped we'd get a final decision this year, but unfortunately the EPA is dragging its feet because it can. So we're hoping now we're going to get a decision on its toxicity next year. But strangely enough, a few years back, the EPA had a database on the website which actually said that fluoride was a known developmental neurotoxin, but that's since disappeared. Very, very strange. The CDC, the Dental Health Division, is nowhere in my estimation. There's only 2 or 3 people working there, and they're basically been bought, sold, and stonkered. In my country, unfortunately, we have. Let's just look at the actors around the issue. We've got the industrialists, starting with Alcoa in America back in the 1930s, with all this hazardous waste they couldn't get rid of.
Sorry, can you explain? Sorry to interrupt. Can you explain how fluoride, hydrofluoric acid, or hexafluoric acid is really the byproduct of aluminum smelting, or maybe other things, and that literally, along with lead, arsenic, cadmium, chromium, mercury, it's all these things that are used in metal smelting to manufacture aluminum. They're used. There's no regulations. They're put in one bucket, and then tax money is paid to buy this waste from aluminum smelters, maybe other metal smelters, I don't know. But this is where it comes from, because in the process.
Aluminum and phosphate fertilizer. These days in America, it's mainly phosphate from phosphate fertilizer, industrial hazardous waste from Florida.
Okay, but Alcoa is a big aluminium.
Yeah, that's right. It's probably still, there's enough of a market for the waste from the aluminium smelters to be used in fluoridation as well. You have to, I suppose, you start off with the rock, bauxite rock for aluminium, and fluorapatite ore for phosphate. And all these ores contain very, very low levels of heavy metals such as cadmium and arsenic and lead and mercury. Oh, yeah, lead as well, definitely. And they all get sort of, they're not required in the aluminium and the phosphate fertilizer product, so they all become part of the waste stream. And it takes a huge amount of land to sequester them and to keep them out of harm's way. And I think in Florida, there's a still pond where it melted through the bedrock, well, we would say silt, should we say, and the pond couldn't contain it anymore. So it then flowed into the Gulf of Mexico. Sorry about my geography in this case. It's somewhere around there.
I mean, the point is, this is fluoride that's in the food, in the water.
Yeah.
It's what people are, this is so toxic that it burns holes in cement.
Oh, yes, it absolutely does that. I agree with you there, yes. But obviously, when they have the biggest storage tanks in the water treatment works, they have to put bunds around the tanks just in case there's a leakage. And of course, the metal containers, the storage tanks, can't be made of metal because that just melts through the metal. And it's a 20% solution in the UK, and that's really nasty stuff. Well, you mentioned, first of all, about hydrofluorosilicic acid. It's the same as hexa, but the hexa is a neat way of drawing your attention away from the fact there's hydrogen in that acid. And we've got a problem with hydrofluoric acid, as we know, because it's a really nasty, nasty corrosive acid. And it is present in hexafluorosilicic acid at 1.5%. So not many people know that, as it were, but when you have a British standard, which I've got here, which tells you everything you need to know, it's primer on, right, the title is very, very deceitful because it's not for water treatment.
Chemicals used for treatment of water intended for human consumption. Hexafluorosilicic acid.
Right, okay. It's not water treatment, but they make it look like it is. But we get to the annex at the back, really hidden away, page 19. I have to read this out to you, it's in small print. Hexafluorosilicic acid is used for the fluoridation of drinking water to increase the resistance of consumers to dental decay.
Bollocks.
Yes, but that's the actual medicinal intent.
Yeah, so but it's a lie. It's a flat out lie.
And there's a lie. In fact, it doesn't increase the resistance, but that is the statement which we're flying with. Yeah.
Well, I mean, Matt Hancock, Neil Ferguson can say that 60 million people are going to die, and then he can change that. So they could say whatever they want.
Yeah, that's what I say. Yeah, but the British standard has been like that for several years, and I don't think they will change it. The other part of the British standard deals with the actual heavy metals, as well as the hydrofluoric acid. Now, can I just take you to something about hydrofluoric acid, because I'm really concerned about it. Where it's 1.5%, and they put 6.3 milligrams of the acid into each litre of water in order to get 1 milligram of fluoride into each litre of water. That's because it's a 20% solution and it's heavier than water, so 6.3. So if you multiply 1.5% by 6.3, you end up with 0.1 milligrams of hydrofluoric acid, which stays in the drinking water. It's free, so therefore it doesn't dissociate. So it goes into your stomach, where if you have a protein meal, it reacts with the hydrochloric acid, and Bob's your uncle, you've got a eroded stomach lining. Now, I don't know the answer to this, but years ago, I remember in the 1970s, my first husband came down with a stomach ulcer, and we didn't know why, but it was just after they've started putting the fluoride into Coventry's tap water in 1979. And he suffered, obviously. He had all these medicines and they put cameras down and all that sort of thing. He's better now. He doesn't live in Coventry. He lives somewhere where there's no fluoride. But if hydrofluoric acid is doing that to your stomach, and that's one of the first signs of ill health when it comes to fluoride, what else is it doing to the rest of your body?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's diabolical. Look at what Dr. Dean Burke said in 1982. He said he worked for the National Cancer Institute. He worked with Otto Warburg. and he studied fluoride, and he said he doesn't know anything that would reduce cancer deaths more than stopping the fluoridation of water in 1982. So meaning your husband perhaps had stomach lining, there's cancer issues, there's brain issues, there's cognitive issues, there's intelligence issues. So, I mean, our group and our circles are convinced that this is this is the end goal. This is what they want. It's deliberate. It's to have a less empowered public, essentially, and I guess a more controllable public. I'm not saying we need to go down that road, but so you were talking about hydrofluorosilicic acid and its concentrations in fluoride and how dangerous it is. So why don't you continue?
Yes, okay. So if it's regarded as drinking water, and the drinking water standards then apply, the arsenic present in 1 litre of water is 25% of maximum allowable. But when you look at arsenic, and lead's the same, 25%. But if you look at both of those, they should follow the ALARP principle, as low as reasonably practicable. And I've got a really good way of keeping them very low by not putting it in the drinking water in the first place. Because water treatment engineers try to give you potable water by removing all the nasties, and they can't completely succeed, but they do the best they can. And then at the end of the process, when it's treated and ready to be released to the mains, they add back arsenic and lead and antimony and cadmium and chromium and mercury and nickel. They all were present in the original ore used to make phosphate fertilizer. So they can't take the stuff out. It goes into the waste stream with hydrogen, which comes from the sulfuric acid they use to boil the crushed ore to extract the phosphate. Plus the scrubbing liquor used to wash the gases out of the chimneys. And the scrubbing liquor is from still ponds, which contains lots of other horrible things. All in all, it's a dirty, big, nasty soup of contaminants.
I mean, let's put this.
Of course, it's going to cause damage to our health, 24/7 for the rest of our lives.
So let's put this in, into context. You have either aluminum or a fertilizer factory. They have drain off still ponds of all the waste, chemicals, disgusting residuals, lead, fluoride, cadmium, mercury, antimony, arsenic. It's in this pond as waste. And this is what's bought from them and added into the water.
Yep. Nobody believes me. You do, don't you?
And thus it's in the food, it's in anything made with water. And you can't use a Brita filter and get it out. It doesn't come out that way. It has to be reverse osmosis.
Yeah, reverse osmosis or distillation.
And if you boil it, you're condensing, you're drinking higher. If you boil your water that's not filtered, you have a higher concentration of fluoride in it, like Roy said.
A little, yes.
So, and then Dr. Dean Burke said what he did in 1982. So, I mean, it should be stopped immediately is what we're really coming to a conclusion.
Well, you'd think so, but of course, about 5 years ago, a PhD student did a study on bone cancer in relation to fluoride, and she showed that young men who've been brought up in a fluoridated area had a higher chance of coming down with bone cancer than young men who didn't live in a fluoridated area. And that was a nice study. Well, the numbers of young men who were dying from osteosarcoma were not a huge amount of boys. So it did fly for a while, hotly disputed, even by the student's own assessor, because he said, I'm going to bring out something to disprove what you're saying, but I'm going to go with your study because it's very well performed. Well, that's actually died a death. Osteosarcoma doesn't happen in huge numbers, so it's really difficult to prove on a population-wide basis that it is happening. I have difficulty with the cancer thing, and I think it's a knock-on effect, because you know that fluoride disrupts enzymes, and if it disrupts an enzyme, then the whole pathway is disrupted. And it also is a disrupting of the endocrine system. And we certainly know that it has a nasty effect on the thyroid gland. I can just tell you about a story we did in research in 2014 done by Kent University. They mapped, the research team mapped the incidence of hypothyroidism against fluoridated areas in England. And the conclusion they came to was that in fluoridated West Midlands, where I come from, there was almost double the amount of hypothyroidism compared to non-fluoridated Greater Manchester, large conglomerations of people in the large populations, almost double. But then we looked at England as a whole, it was exactly 30% more hypothyroidism in fluoridated England compared to non-fluoridated England. Now that should have been something to jolt the Department of Health into doing some more research, but they've just buried it because they don't want to find any harm. They just don't want to do it, because I think the other actor, apart from the industrialists, are the dental profession, because for whatever reason they don't want fluoridation to die. Well, you can read into what you want of that. There may be many reasons, but then you got. And I think that the occurrence of hypothyroidism is a scandal. It's a scar on this country, simply because we know that it does damage the thyroid gland. And if I take you to the other end of the continuum, which is hyperthyroidism, we go back to 1932, Austria, where a doctor was trying to cure his patients who had hyperthyroidism. Their thyroid glands were being poisoned by too much iodine in the drinking water. And the only way he could do it at the time, because they didn't have neat little pills, he decided he was going to put his patients into warm water baths containing hydrofluoric acid. Yeah. About 30 patients, 7 baths over 14 months each. They all were cured. Therefore, as far as I'm concerned, fluoride dampens down the thyroid gland. And they were okay. They're okay because obviously they're kept away from Vienna water with too much iodine in it thereafter.
Wow. All right. Well, I could talk a lot more, but we're running out of time, so I'm going to pass you to Grace. Thanks, Joy.
Thank you very much. Hi, Grace.
Oh, hi. Let's see. Oh, okay. Hey, Joy. Thank you for being here, and thank you for everything that you do. So what I'm hearing is that we don't need fluoride, and I'm just repeating is for people who are still maybe convinced that they need fluoride. We don't need it to make our teeth look beautiful, because who doesn't want to have a good teeth, right? And then we don't need fluoride because it's really poisonous. And to the viewers, there's really many good articles out there. So what I did, Joy, is I reached out to Robert Slovak, who is, I consider him as my water expert, but he's really a world water expert. And he sent me articles. And one of the best source is from other than your website, the website for you is that Dr. Mercola had this whole article. And he also sent me some information from NIH. And Joy, there were prints, pages and pages of foods, that there's list of foods with fluoride. Okay, so if parents know that. And of course, this has been a movement already for a long time, right? Because I noticed that they have a conference in 217, conference on fluoride. So do you know if you have other upcoming events for, online summit for fluoride, for people to really, get to know more, if they're still convinced or doubtful that they really need fluoride. And also I heard from you that it affects your neural system, your endocrine system, and it does affect your mitochondria, which is for energy. Now, if we relate it, what's happening now, Joy, Isn't that just a perfect plan again? Because now people are so tired, exhausted, fearful, and so we continue to, be put down or dumbed down, right? So what other resources, what your organization and other resources that people can reach out?
Ooh, okay. Well, the organization which you might not know about is the International Society for Fluoride Research, and they have a journal called Fluoride. And it's very strange that a lot of researchers submit their research to fluoride because they will get a fair hearing. It won't be edited or anything like that. The mainstream journals won't touch articles on fluoride, very strange enough, because it's the political agenda not to acknowledge harm. Right, so the ISFR is the best organization for research, and they have conferences. You mentioned mitochondria. I've just got a few notes here. Yeah, we know that fluoride is used to potentiate pharmaceutical drugs, to get the active substance into cells. So you can rather like a train with the carriages after it. The fluoride is the train, the engine, and the carriages after it are the active substance. So they're dragged into the cells. And if fluoride hangs around for a long time, yes, of course, it's going to affect the mitochondria. I'm just wondering if that's because the mitochondria are supposed to be bacteria, which used to be bacteria but became part of us eventually. I'm just wondering if that's why they are damaged. Could well be. Right. I haven't heard of Robert Slovak before. That's really interesting to hear. And I've made a note of his name. That's good. National Institute of Health. I think, is that I've got a book here which is really good, and I'll find it in a second. Yes, here it is. Excuse me, I'm just going to stand up.
Yeah, because in that National Institute of Health, they even mention about the damages that it does to the dogs. So so they did all of that, and one can find that, and it's really more 65 times more poisonous than calcium fluoride.
Yes, it
Yeah.
is.
And you
It
mentioned
is.
about the cancer, so it's linked to cancer, not just bone cancer. So for people again who are listening right now, just listen. If this information is going to you, maybe it's time for you to say, okay, what else can you do in the so because that for me, Joy, in the last 2 years, I up my game. I up my game when it comes to water. Yep, I bought my own RO water, and they're different for RO water, but it's kind of tricky. Don't get too fancy with the RO water, because when you get too fancy, you cannot maintain it and it will be more harmful. So what's recommended is just a top countertop, and a certain brand that I know of from Robert Slovak. So yeah, and then yes, people have to really be engaged, as you said, Joy. Sign, support the petitions, because as you're working on that's the long term, the day-to-day things, right? So my follow-up question, Joy, is the biologic dentist. I know all of them knows about not the danger of fluoride, and they will never recommend it. Is your organization in touch with organizations like the organization of holistic, but definitely biologic dentists? Because people have to start going to them as well, because then people will know what causes really dental cavities, because they think it's just lack of fluoride. Oh, it's beyond that.
Right. Yes. We do have holistic dentists in Britain. I must admit I haven't actually contacted them yet. I've got a huge long list of people to contact to try and get them to come on board. Yeah. You're saying about reverse osmosis. I know it's sort of not. It's destructured dead water. I understand that, but surely if you add back a little bit of electrolytes to it, it restores it again. I don't think that we can actually sort of damn reverse osmosis. I know there are other water filters coming on board at the moment. Most people seem to prefer the distiller, though, because that actually gives you steamed water.
Right.
Yeah.
It just says that, so if it's an RO, use a tankless RO system with a compressor. And if it's the distillation, the problem with the distillation is also pulls out the beneficial minerals. However, it says bone char filters and biochar is recommended. So these articles are like, the one that I have right now is from Dr. Mercola. And I know, like, you know, there are other information there out as well. Now, there's no fear if it's pulling away, it's like some minerals, because they're also good water that's like the Quinton plasma, which is a pure seawater, and that's been hundreds of years of study of that. That's really helpful. So I guess people really have to study what really causes, yes, I think most people say fluoride because they went for their teeth. So now people has to really study. It goes beyond more than what we drink, or because definitely it's not, the fluoride is not the answer for your teeth. It's not even brushing too much or flossing so much, because I did that a lot. And I went to the dentist and they said, you're not flossing. You said, I do. But during that time, my GI system was not strong. So it's creating that kind of reverse, effect on my teeth. So I think it would be so good if your organization could hook up and coordinate and collaborate with because I learned a lot more from this, from dentists and dental assistants who even do energy medicine.
Okay, that's lovely. Yes. Yeah. Well, what am I supposed to say? When it comes to water which is filtered, we have to take into account the fact that many people can't afford sophisticated filtration systems.
Yeah.
I mean, the people I've been talking to recently have had to save up £100 for their distiller, and even then it's going to use electricity. The alternative is bottled water, but then that's very bad for the planet. I agree with that, and there's a huge amount of water miles involved with bringing, in my case, water down from Scotland, which is very, very good water, heavy 5-litre bottles. There's no easy answer, Grace, I'm afraid.
I know.
Yeah. You have to do the best you can. And if the water's not disagreeing with you, then continue with it. It's really bad news. What I want to say here is this: why on earth should we have to do this? Just because they put toxin in the drinking water? We should fight that as much as we can. And the best thing we can do at the moment is to basically withhold our water charges. And I've been doing that for 2 years. I pay my sewage charge, but I do not pay for the drinking water because it's not drinking water. And I'm getting away with it. And if they take me to court, the judge will say, "Well, you're being reasonable because you're paying for something which is a service to take the sewage away from your house and the overflow water from the rain. You're just being reasonable." So I can't, as far as I can see, the judge will not say you're being unreasonable. The trouble is, we're not going to be taken to court because the water companies don't want the publicity. In this country, they have to put the stuff in the drinking water. They have no choice. It's legislation that says you will do it. And if they don't do it, they stand to lose their license to supply water or medicine in this case. So I'm not fearful about being taken to court, although I would like to be taken to court, because I can it could be a precedent as long as it's a high court, as long as it's not magistrate's court or anything like that. So that's what we're doing here. I mean, we are encouraging people, if they're fluoridated, to stop paying half their water charges. And that's, it's quite empowering, after the first year and you're a bit worried, you get away with it. Oh, okay. But next year you get the double amount on your bill. But hey, go away. Let's just pay for the sewerage. Actually, I keep saying that's all the water's fit for, is the sewerage.
Yeah. Thank you. And we really appreciate your presence. And the bottom line is it always goes down to free choice, free will. We're not trying to impose to any of you that you should do all of this. If you don't believe it, it's fine. It's your body. It's your health. So thank you so much for
You're
being
welcome.
here.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Joy, thanks very much for coming on this evening. And is there any final last words you'd just like to leave us out on, or basically where people can even find your website and find, keep up with the work and stuff that you're doing as well?
Okay, that's the petition. Anybody? Are you domiciled in England, Chris?
Yes.
Okay, right. So if you got followers, that's the petition.
Petition on the Parliament website against water fluoridation. All right, no worries. We'll leave it in the links and stuff below as well.
Okay.
Perfect.
And my website is www.ukfffa.org.uk. That's a UK Freedom from Fluoride Alliance. But we're transitioning to Fluoride Free Alliance UK to fit in with all our friends in other parts of the world. We can do this. It's going to be too blooming expensive for the government to spend money on, I think it's 1,180 water treatment works to put the capital equipment in, which is about £400,000 each time. It's going to be far too expensive. I won't be able to do it in one go, of course, and they'll probably run out of steel before they're finished. No, I mean, run out of electronic gauges before they're finished. Because so I think people thinking, well, we're threatened, but it may not happen. But we can't accept, or we can't go along with that, just in case we're caught napping.
Yeah, no, we got to fight these tyrants every corner, every chance we get. So
Yeah.
yeah, good on you for not paying the water charges. Water is a God-given right. Nobody should be paying for water anyway, good, bad, or indifferent. As simple as that. That's my take on that. But yeah, thanks again, Joy, for coming on this evening. And yeah, keep up the good work. 17, 18 plus years later. So hopefully there'll be another that much again in it. So keep chugging on and get us the positive news, and hopefully those numbers will rise and getting the awareness out there. So thanks again.
Thank you very much, all of you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.